There are a bunch of spicy new things happening in the Cycle Frontier, and I'm going to tell you exactly what they are.
Hi, my name is Jordan Merrill, and I got the opportunity to play an internal playtest for the Cycle Frontier partners. So I got to try out and play a lot of the new things that have been added into the Cycle Frontier. There's a bunch of stuff to get into, so let's get started. I'm going to be splitting up all the information in this video into 4 separate parts. You'll see the chapters down below. If you're more interested in one of them than the other, feel free to go navigate to that now. The first group of things that I want to talk about is the character changes. The first one, and probably my least favorite, is the stamina regen changes. So they basically have reworked a lot of the ways that stamina works in the game. Basically, the way it ends up feeling is that stamina gets used at about the same rate as it used to get used, but I feel like it regens a lot slower now. Also, instead of being able to crouch and have your stamina regen after a little bit, the only time that you'll get a stamina regen boost is when you're standing still. I think it's really restrictive, and it almost feels like you have to stop moving and just wait 10 seconds to play the game again, since walking is so slow in the game, and since not having stamina really isn't an option because you can't use your pickaxe, you can't run, you can't jump, you can't mantle. Well, I guess you can mantle, but anyways, very restrictive. I think that they're probably going to change some things about it again, so keep that in mind. And also a huge caveat for any of the changes that I'm mentioning in this video, this is their current iteration of the game, and it's our opportunity as the community to give feedback on any of these things that have changed so that it ends up being the way that we want it to be once the game is launched. Another big thing that I actually really liked was the tweaks done to fall damage. So fall damage used to be a pretty big reason why people died, and it's definitely still in the game. You can definitely still kill yourself from dropping from too high of heights, but I feel like the fall damage has been brought into a much more happy place where if you fall, you're going to take damage, you're going to be punished for falling, but you're probably not going to go 100 to 0, especially when it looks like you could jump that far and then suddenly you just die. That doesn't happen as much anymore. Also, another big change that has helped not dying to fall damage is they've reworked all of the ledges and how mantling works in the game. So your experience climbing up and down rocks and trying to land on things that look like you should be able to land on them is going to be so much easier. Another huge thing in closed beta 1 that people really didn't like was the rubber banding issues. That was completely gone. Granted, during closed beta 1, there was a lot of traffic on the servers, and so it may be that the changes are due to the fact that we didn't have very many people playing in this closed test. It's hard to say, but I'm optimistic for closed beta 2, which, by the way, is going to be on March 10th. So mark your calendars. All right, next up, new planet things. Maybe that's not a very good title for this section, but that's what I have written down, new planet things. So creatures had a pretty big rework. A lot of the more nitty gritty details I'm not going to get into about the certain health values of various creatures and things like that, but suffice to say, creatures feel stronger. Creatures feel like much more of a threat now. Once you figured out the way to take care of each of the different creatures in closed beta 1, they became more of a chore rather than something exciting and fun to fight. Now, not only are there variants to the Striders, the Rattlers, the Marauders, and I think that there's probably Crusher variants as well, although I didn't personally see any. Each one of these elite variants has more health and does more damage. Also, during the storm, the creatures have a certain bioluminescence to them, which is really cool. They've added a stagger mechanic to the Striders, so that when you shoot the Striders, they kind of like recoil a little bit, which I think is really interesting. I didn't feel like it was super impactful. The pathing of the mobs is so much better. The programming that goes into these creatures is very different now. Instead of coming in kind of like a random horde, the Striders will actually come single file and they'll kind of hunt you. And creatures follow you so much further now, which is really terrifying because you can't just walk 20 feet away, hop on a box, heal, and then come back. They'll follow you. Also, another note, Rattlers, instead of just being able to hide behind an object and have them shoot the object and then move out and shoot them, they will move around the objects to find an angle where they can shoot you at. They added another attack for the Marauders. So the Marauder still has its acid spit attack that lasts for a long time, but now it also has a direct line of sight kind of shot where it shoots a blast of something, I don't know, some sort of goo or acid out from its mouth, it is very quick. It is almost hit scan. I've never been able to dodge it in time. My reaction speed may be slower than yours, so maybe you can do it. Or if you're already running, maybe it's different for you. But I feel like it's really strong, and they might need to tone down the speed of that projectile. But I do think it's cool that Jeff gets 2 attacks. Speaking of monsters, you may have tried the uplink station before in closed beta 1, but now when you start the uplink, all of the monsters in the area around it hear the uplink and come running towards you. And so you get this massive horde of creatures to fight. It's really crazy to see a huge horde of creatures running. And I think it really fits because if you're going to be making all of this noise, these alien creatures are sitting, 50 feet away. They're going to hear you. They're going to come and investigate. Another couple of things that are new on the planet. One of the biggest things that's probably in the thumbnail of this video is the laser drill. The laser drill is a new on-planet event that you can call down by placing a beacon on a laser drill location. This beacon currently costs 100,000 K marks. So it's definitely not a cheap thing that you can just do every time. It's definitely going to require a lot of preparation and even maybe teamwork to help protect this drill. It's got a nice sound to it, though. It sounds meaty. It's just crazy to see this platform come down out of the sky and start lasering the ground. The event itself lasts for maybe 5 or so minutes, but I think it's going to be a very crucial event that people can trigger on the game, and it's going to make it so that maybe if you're doing something else on the planet, you give up doing that thing and you come and investigate the laser drill. I didn't even realize my mic had been slowly sliding up. Another thing that I wasn't sure if this was true, but apparently it is true. If you stay on the laser drill until the end of its cycle, it will actually count as a free evac where it will take you back up to the station. I'm not exactly sure if I like that because part of the risk of calling down this laser drill feels like after you finish the laser drill, you should have to fight your way off of the planet with the loot. I don't know. There's a couple ways that you can think about it. By the fact that it is its own evac, it might be a little bit more defensive and therefore kind of like a good thing where you just have to defend the laser drill from people trying to get onto it. I don't know. It can also kind of be seen as a little overpowered because if somebody kills you while you're drilling, then they can just evacuate with all of your loot. I don't know. Maybe there's more balancing to be done there. There's another new thing that you can call down onto the planet as well, and it's an oil drill. On Crescent Falls, there are certain black rocks on the ground where you can break them with your pickaxe and it kind of unearths an oil deposit, an oil fountain, if you will. I'm not sure if I have any footage of them. If I do, I'll put it here. If not, here's the graphic of the oil drill thing that you can purchase, which is also 100,000 K marks currently. Another thing to note is that keys now have durability. So any locked rooms that you've been to before, when you use your key card to unlock it, it will use one durability. Now, currently the durability on some of these cards is really low, all the way down to only 5 uses on some of them. I definitely don't think key cards should have unlimited uses, but I think it maybe should be a little bit more, maybe like 20 at the minimum, or depending on the rarity of the key card, maybe it could last longer, or maybe if it's a rare one, you can use it less times. Because of the fact that it's a more powerful keycard, it should have less uses. So we'll have to see how they tweak that. The map team has been working really hard and a lot of changes have happened to the different maps. The skeleton observation area on Crescent Falls, the big desert area in the top right of the map, it has basically had its level, its altitude compared to the rest of the map, brought down significantly. So before you had to go all the way around the map just to get around to the skeleton area. Now that's not the case. You can actually walk across at a lot more locations. There's even a new area that I'll show on the screen where you can actually enter down from below the skeleton observation area and enter the desert from that side too. I think this is a great change. It helps map pathing. It feels like I'm more likely going to go over there and actually investigate that area. Definitely a good change. The loot on Bright Sands received a big pass where before the loot was kind of, generally distributed. You could find different types of loot in a lot of places. Sure, it was kind of specific to each of the faction locations, but now the loot is even more specific to where if you want to look for the bark, you can only find it at the logging camp. And so it does feel cool that the loot has become more specific to what the location is. So each location feels like somewhere where you need to go at some point if you're looking for a specific thing. But what I found was that, especially with a lot of the early missions that you have to do now, I would go to these locations to search for these items and they would just be gone. I couldn't really progress in some of my missions because I couldn't find any of the loot, because that was the only location I could find it, and it was already taken. It does feel cool, but also kind of bad at the same time. There's also one other new thing. There's a new locked room in the middle of Bright Sands. In that kind of office area on the side, there's actually a new loot room. It's a white rarity, so it's only common, so we'll have to see if it's a good loot room or not. All right, now in the last section, just miscellaneous things that I want to mention that felt important to me. There are a bunch of new weapon optics. There's 2 to 4 times scopes, there's a 6 times scope, an 8 times scope. The sniper doesn't come with an 8 times anymore, it just has an iron sights, so if you want a scope, you gotta slap one on it. The only scopes that you can buy are the red dot and the 2 times currently, so it definitely does feel balanced that you can't just buy all the scopes that you want. You're gonna have to craft those. Also, they added the weapon skins into the game, so we'll see which of these actually get implemented. A lot of them look really cool, so I'm excited to see where that goes. One of my least favorite things that happened in this test was the pocket size and the stash size were both nerfed incredibly hard. The pockets went from 5 to 6 to 7 spots. The stash went from 75 to 85 to 95. They just felt like such small and almost meaningless increments, especially when you're trying to complete all these quests, so you need to get the loot. But then I had to sell my loot because I didn't have enough room in my stash and I was just going crazy. I just felt like I was stuck and I couldn't find the loot that I needed. And when I did find loot, I couldn't actually store it. And I was just, I was losing my mind. But in a roundtable meeting that we had after the weekend of testing, they are very aware of these things and these things will be balanced. And they know that we didn't like it. So rest assured, they know. And I guess I've kind of already mentioned it. Each of the factions have their own kind of campaign missions now, where you go through, you find these different resources and things on the planet that each of these factions specifically wants. You do things that each of these factions are invested in. It is some more world building, and I like that. Although currently they do just kind of feel like glorified regular contracts to me specifically, but that may be due to a couple of reasons. So we'll see where they take it. It's definitely still in the early stages, so we'll have to see where it's at by closed beta 2.
Hey, Future Jordan here. I forgot to mention a couple of things, so I'm going to put them up on the screen. If you have any questions about any of these things, maybe just leave a comment or something like that. They're not like super important. There is a new weapon, so there's that. But I didn't get to play with it because it was very expensive and I didn't have enough time to actually grind for that. So, yeah.
So in summary, the test had a lot of issues, but it is still very work in progress, and they are very aware of a lot of the issues, and they've told us that we want you to experience this so you can give us feedback. However, there are these issues, so they know, and they really are paying close attention to the community feedback. So many of the things that were issues back in closed beta 1 are no longer issues anymore. One of the things that I don't even think I've mentioned, but is maybe my favorite thing actually, is the optimization of the game. The optimization of the game has gone from like 0 to 100. I almost get a solid 144 frames per second on both maps all the time. Huge thumbs up. Way to go, team. Primo, wonderful. So, because they're looking for feedback, because they're interested in the community response to these changes, I'd love if you left a comment below telling me what you're most excited to see for in the new closed beta 2 for the cycle. Again, happening on March 10th. If there's any specific changes that you want to see, if there's one of the changes that I've talked about today that you're, not in favor of or you are in favor of, let me know down in the comments. I definitely will potentially mention some things, especially if there is a lot of community feedback about how people are feeling. So feel free to put your comments down there, or if you have any questions, as always, let me know. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it all the way to the end, you're a beautiful person, and I love you. If you're not already following me on Twitch, definitely drop a follow down below. I'll have the link in the description so that you can find my Twitch channel. So anyways, thank you very much. I appreciate each and every one of you. Take care, and we'll catch you very soon.